This is Atomic Biscuits, and I'm your host, BACFA. Hello, once again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Atomic Biscuits. This is episode 2025-0309, Storm Echo. We're going to start over here at theblaze.com this week. 25 Dem senators parrot same script in videos slamming Trump, Musk. That is Candace Hathaway from March the 4th. On Tuesday, 25 Democratic senators released separate videos parroting the same script, slamming President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. In the morning, Senators Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, and Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, were mocked by X users for posting videos reciting near-identical lines before Trump's first speech to Congress. However, as the day unfolded, more than 24 Democratic senators posted similar videos echoing the same script, including Dick Durbin from Illinois, Chris Coons from Delaware, Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, Tim Kaine of Virginia, Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, Gary Peters from Michigan, Mazie Hirono from Hawaii, Peter Welch from Vermont, Ben Ray Luquan, New Mexico, Martin Heinrich from New Mexico, Jeff Merkley from Oregon, Mark Kelly from Arizona, Brian Schatz from Hawaii, Andy Kim from New Jersey, Alex Padilla from California, Mark Warner from Virginia, Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, Angela Alsobrooks from Maryland, Ed Markey from Massachusetts, Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, and Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island. The senators' videos matched so closely that many followed the same movements for the introduction, reading the first line before taking a seat to continue reading the remainder of the script. The video opened with a short clip of Trump vowing to lower the cost of living for Americans beginning on the first day of his presidency. Shit, that ain't true, all of the Democrats stated. That's what you just saw. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are up, not down. Inflation is getting worse, not better. Prices of groceries, gas, housing, eggs, they're all getting more expensive. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has done nothing to lower costs for you, they said with slight variations. Instead, he's pardoned violent criminals who beat police officers on January 6th. The videos continued, cutting from the senators to show a clip from the protest at the Capitol. He's letting Elon Musk take a chainsaw to vital government programs, and then even worse, giving him access to Americans' most sensitive data, Social Security numbers, tax returns, health care bills, the Democrats stated. They accused Trump and Musk of firing thousands of essential workers and freezing funds for vital programs. Why are they doing this? Trump, Musk, DOJ's Department of Government Efficiency are taking these vital services away from you for one reason only, so they can give tax breaks to their billionaires club, they added. Billionaires win, families lose, and that is the truth, the senators concluded. Musk fired back at the Democrat senators for repeating the same lines. They're all actors reading a script, he wrote on X. In a separate post, he called the senators lazy propagandists. Who is writing the words that the puppets speak? That's the real question, Musk added. Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah also responded to the controversy. It's almost like someone's telling Democrats what to say, Lee wrote. Again, that's over at theblaze.com. Over at One America News, they had this story. State Department designates the Houthis as an official foreign terrorist organization. This is by Blake Wolf. The U.S. State Department, under the Trump administration, designated the Yemen-based Houthis as an official foreign terrorist organization. President Donald Trump previously designated the group as a terrorist organization during his first term as well, only to be revoked by former President Joe Biden, who was concerned the designation would prevent the delivery of humanitarian aid into Yemen. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the reinstated designation, which disincentivizes any groups from providing military support or other aid to the Houthis through the threat of sanctions and penalties. Today, the State Department is fulfilling one of President Trump's first promises upon taking office, and I'm pleased to announce the department's designation of Ansarallah, commonly referred to as the Houthis, as a foreign terrorist organization, Rubio stated. Since 2023, the Houthis have launched hundreds of attacks against commercial vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, as well as U.S. service members defending freedom of navigation and our regional partners. Most recently, the Houthis spared Chinese-flagged ships while targeting American and allied vessels, he concluded. The United States will not tolerate any country engaging with terrorist organizations like the Houthis in the name of practicing legitimate international business. The Houthis are Zaidi Shiites. Shiite Muslims are the minority community in the Islamic world, and the Zaidis are a minority of Shiites, significantly different in doctrine and beliefs from the Shiites who dominate in Iran, Iraq, and elsewhere, often called Twelvers for their belief in 12 imams. The Zadiyah take their name from Zayd bin Ali, the great-grandson of Ali, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, whom all Shiites revere. Zayd bin Ali led an uprising against Umayyad Empire in 740, the first dynastic empire in Islamic history, which ruled from Damascus. Zayd was martyred in his revolt, and his head is believed to be buried in a shrine to him in Karak, Jordan. Zaydis believe he was a model of a pure caliph who should have ruled instead of the Umayyads, according to the Brookings Institution. The Yemen-based Houthis have been extremely active in supporting fellow Islamist group Hamas following the October 7, 2023 attack on Israel, targeting over 100 merchant vessels and threatening international trade. Following the temporary Gaza ceasefire, the Houthis claimed that it would only attack Israeli-affiliated ships, although they left the door open for further aggression if necessary. Meanwhile, the United Nations announced last month that they have suspended humanitarian operations in Houthi-controlled regions following the arrest of 8 UN staffers by Houthi terrorists. The 8 detained UN workers are in addition to dozens more UN workers who have been detained in recent months while the war in Yemen between the Iran-backed Houthis and the official government of Yemen rages on. There's more to read over at One America News. That's OANN.com. Well, it's a bit of a fire sale in D.C. as everything that we once knew and loved about the stodgy old swamp is ablaze. Over at thegatewaypundit.com, they had this article, Winning. Trump administration proposes selling 443 federal properties across 47 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico, including DOJ and FBI headquarters, Nancy Pelosi and Dick Cheney buildings. It's by Jim Hoft. I'm just surprised it's not deeper. I hear they're going to abolish the IRS next. President Donald Trump is proving once again why he's the king of slashing government waste and draining the swamp. In a blockbuster report from Bloomberg, the Trump administration has unveiled plans to unload a massive portfolio of 443 federal properties across 47 states, D.C., and Puerto Rico. Properties bloated with bureaucracy, including the headquarters of the DOJ, FBI, and even the General Services Administration itself. The General Services Administration, or GSA, disclosed a list of 443 non-core assets encompassing a mix of prime commercial spaces that currently serve as regional hubs for various federal agencies. We are identifying buildings and facilities that are not core to government operations or non-core properties for disposal. Selling ensures that taxpayer dollars are no longer spent on vacant or underutilized federal spaces, GSA wrote on its website. Disposing of these assets helps eliminate costly maintenance and allows us to reinvest in high-quality work environments that support agency missions. These properties span nearly 80 million rentable square feet, equivalent to 12 pentagons. The potential sale of these assets could lead to more than $430 million in annual savings on operating costs, aligning with President Trump's commitment to trim government expenditure. Among the high-profile properties listed are the headquarters of several major departments, such as Justice, Agriculture, and Veterans Affairs, primarily located in the Washington, D.C. area. Also, the Nancy Building in San Francisco and the Dick Cheney Federal Building in Wyoming. The GSA even suggested selling its own headquarters as part of this plan. I guess they would prefer to work remotely. There's a whole list here over at thegatewaypundit.com. Here's what I wonder. Are these buildings really empty, and do the monies that go to them really go to just general maintenance, or is this also another money laundering operation where assets are being used in ways that are off book? So money is being spent on something that is attributed to land and buildings, but actually is going somewhere else. We'll see. I don't know how much value some of these buildings will have, as your regular commercial buildings aren't getting filled with workers unless the employers are anxious to get them back to the office. For jobs that can be done remotely, there seems to be quite a bit of feeling that maybe they could continue to be remote, whereas things that require your physical presence obviously can't be done remotely. But that hybrid schedules and other flexible work arrangements are the modern workplace. And so rolling things back to the way they used to be in order to fund REITs and to keep landowners happy because they have renters may not really work out the way that they think it will. I'll leave the link to all of these stories over on my account at Gab. You'll find me under the account BACFA. And I want to apologize. I had scheduled some postings out there in the weeks gone by, but as I went to review some of those links, I couldn't find them. So I went ahead and reposted some of those things. So you'll find a lot of new content this week out on Gab at my account. There's a lot of fun people out there chatting all the time. This story is from the Free Beacon, freebeacon.com. Dem mega donor who launched socially conscious climate finance firm arrested on federal fraud charges. Anti-poverty activist Joseph Sandberg poured tens of thousands of dollars into Biden's 2020 campaign and progressive PACs. This is by Jessica Koskew. A Democratic megadonor and co-founder of a, quote, socially conscious climate finance firm, Joseph Sandberg, was arrested Monday on federal charges of conspiring to defraud investment funds of at least $145 million. The Department of Justice accused Sandberg, the co-founder and largest shareholder of Aspirational Partners, Inc., a climate-friendly banking alternative that's good for your wallet and the planet, of orchestrating a scheme with Ibrahim Amin al-Husseini to mislead investors through falsified financial documents. The pair hired a graphic designer from Lebanon to create fake brokerage accounts and bank statements that falsely inflated al-Husseini's financial assets, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California. Sandberg leveraged al-Husseini's fabricated financial standing to secure $145 million in loans, prosecutors said. Al-Husseini pled guilty to wire fraud on Monday and admitted to pocketing $12.3 million from the scam. He and Sandberg each face up to 20 years in prison. Since 2009, Sandberg has contributed more than $370,000 to Democrat campaigns and allied progressive committees. Financial disclosures reviewed by the Washington Free Beacon show. In 2020 alone, he shelled out over $50,000 to the Biden Victory Fund and another $10,000 for the Progressive Justice Democrats PAC, which is a political action committee. Al-Husseini, who was a Code Pink board member at the time of his October arrest, is a fellow Democrat megadonor who's donated more than $200,000 since 2020 alone. A criminal complaint against him was dismissed in November in exchange for providing prosecutors with information on Sandberg and others, the Justice Department revealed Monday. In addition to co-founding Aspiration, Sandberg also launched anti-poverty efforts, including the nonprofit Golden State Opportunity and Cal EITC for Me, one of the state's largest anti-poverty programs. He also founded Working Hero PAC, a people-powered political organization focused on electing progressive candidates. According to his website, Sandberg is a prominent fighter for raising the minimum wage, taxing the ultra-wealthy, canceling student debt, delivering Medicare for all, and passing a Green New Deal. Aspiration, meanwhile, brands itself as a climate-conscious rival to conventional finance with carbon offset efforts, such as planting trees at the core of its business model. Superstar celebrities, including Robert Downey Jr., Orlando Bloom, and Leonardo DiCaprio, who joined Aspiration's board of advisors in 2019, have endorsed the company. When it comes to climate change, your money is power. Every dollar you keep out of the reach of oil, gas, and fossil fuel companies helps defend the earth. Aspiration's website reads, by moving money to Aspiration, you're giving the climate a fighting chance and your deposits a cleaner, greener home. Another Aspiration co-founder, former CEO and failed Arizona congressional candidate Andre Cherny faced scrutiny in 2024 as federal investigators probed whether the company misled customers about its carbon offsets. In 2021, ProPublica reported that only 12 million of the 35 million trees Aspiration claimed it had planted were actually in the ground. Clean rich is the new filthy rich, read Aspiration billboards in New York, Texas, and California, according to ProPublica. In 2019, Sandberg flirted with the idea of running for president, telling the Los Angeles Times that no one was running a campaign to end poverty. I would uniquely talk about poverty, he said, about poverty every hour of every single day and in a different way, which is poverty for the 8 out of 10 Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. Sandberg did not respond to a request for comment. Like so many on the left, they're more than happy to take your money and redistribute it as they see fit, as opposed to living truly charitable lives. Again, that story's over at freebeacon.com. Ahead of his first joint speech before Congress, the Daily Signal ran this article over at dailysignal.com. Made in America, Trump racks up $3 trillion of investments in U.S. economy. This is by Bradley Devlin. For President Donald Trump, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's $100 billion investment in U.S. chip manufacturing represented a tremendous leap, like a leap that nobody would have really said was possible. But TSMC's $100 billion is just a small part of at least $3 trillion in investments and trade commitments the Trump administration has racked up in just 6 weeks since Inauguration Day. The $3 trillion of investment and trade commitments with the United States involve key allies such as India and Japan, and major players in the private sector, Apple and Oracle, to name just two. These arrangements also cover critical industries beyond chip manufacturing, from pharmaceuticals to automobiles to artificial intelligence. With the announcement of TSMC's $100 billion investment, which Trump celebrated with TSMC CEO CCY, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and AI czar David Sachs on Monday, the Taiwanese company is nearly tripling its previous investment in additional chip manufacturing investment in the United States. For the announcement, TSMC had invested $65 billion in U.S.-based manufacturing. Its first American manufacturing plant in Arizona, which began with a $12 billion investment in 2020, opened for business late last year. TSMC plans to use the $100 billion in new investment to set up 3 new chip-making plants, 2 chip-packing plants, as well as a research and development center. TSMC dominates the global semiconductor industry. In terms of revenue, its foundries account for more than 60% of global market share. But that was not always the case. Just over 30 years ago, the U.S. accounted for 37% of global semiconductor production, while Taiwan was just a few measly percent. U.S. policymakers engrossed in the doctrines of free trade saw the semiconductor industry flee to subsidized and protected Asian markets. For decades, free trade dogmatism dragged America into a ditch. Now, the Trump administration is offering a way out. Trump's policies spurred investments that diminish China's leverage over the American economy. These investments are a foundational pillar for any attempt to make the U.S. economy more resilient to a China shock and revitalize American manufacturing. During his first full day of his second term, Trump unveiled Stargate, a $500 billion investment into artificial intelligence over the next 4 years. Trump called Stargate a collaboration between SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, the largest AI infrastructure project by far in history. Just a month prior, SoftBank announced a $100 billion investment that aimed to create 100,000 American jobs. Additionally, Trump secured a $20 billion initial investment by DAMAC Properties in early January for new data centers based in the United States. As Vice President J.D. Vance outlined in his speech at the Paris AI Summit last month, the Trump administration is committed to competing with China in the AI space while also challenging European notions of how to regulate AI and chart the future of the AI economy. After Trump said his administration was considering placing tariffs on pharmaceutical imports, the pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly announced it planned to invest $27 billion in 4 new manufacturing facilities in America. The company claimed that once complete, the plants will create more than 3,000 jobs. Building the facilities themselves will require 10,000 construction workers, the company added. Since China's accession to the World Trade Organization, production of generic drugs and the chemical compounds used as inputs for those drugs increased at a rapid pace. That was not the invisible hand at work. Rather, it was the result of conscious policy choices on the part of the Chinese Communist Party to subsidize those industries, thereby undercutting drug producers and jobs in the United States and across the West, nations that were at the time drinking deeply from free trade dogmatism. Tariffs also may have been a factor in Apple's decision to invest in the American economy. After Trump announced an additional 10% tariff on China, Apple announced it would be investing $500 billion in the United States and hire approximately 20,000 workers. Apple plans to open a new factory in Texas and a manufacturing academy in Detroit, as well as expansions in Arizona, Nevada, California, North Carolina, and other states. Apple will double its investment in its U.S. Advanced Manufacturing Fund, which includes working alongside TSMC in the Taiwanese company's Arizona facility to produce advanced silicon. Apple plans to hire the 20,000 workers over the next 4 years, the vast majority of whom will be focused on silicon engineering, AI, and machine learning, and the like. Trump has also worked with foreign leaders to court more investment in the American economy and bolster American exports. Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman pledged the kingdom would invest $600 billion in America. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi agreed with Trump on increasing the trade between U.S. and India to $500 billion. Japan, meanwhile, has promised to open more auto plants in the United States and import American liquefied natural gas at historic levels, thereby reducing America's trade deficit with its Asian ally. One Japanese automaker, Honda, is reportedly moving production of the Honda Civic hybrid from Mexico to Indiana in response to Trump's tariffs on Mexico and Canada. For Trump and his administration, Make America Great Again starts with actually making things in America again. That story is over at dailysignal.com.
So who's in charge at the New York FBI field office? Who's withholding Epstein docs from the Attorney General? James Dennehy is running the show there. There he is. This is the guy who emailed his whole staff to dig in after Trump took office. And don't forget that James Comey's daughter is an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. She worked on the Epstein and Maxwell cases. She's kind of knee-deep in this. Epstein was facing sex trafficking charges in Lower Manhattan. Where's all that paperwork? The FBI seized computers, surveillance videos, banking records, file cabinets, and photographs from all of Epstein's properties in New Mexico, the Virgin Islands, Palm Beach, and in New York. The Justice Department also gave Epstein a sweetheart non-prosecution deal 17 years ago. Where are those files? The Bureau of Prisons. Where are those files? You remember where Epstein killed himself? I asked Bill Barr about that, why everything seemed to go wrong that night.
When I first heard all the information and all the coincidences here, I was suspicious.
What were the coincidences? I mean, those were a lot of coincidences.
Well, one of the cameras was out.
Right.
He was supposed to have a cellmate. The cellmate left. They didn't replace the cellmate. And the guards who were supposed to check him every half hour didn't check him.
My EMT source said he was on the scene immediately to pull Epstein's body out to the morgue. And when he got to the cell, he saw 7 people there touching Epstein's body and moving stuff around.
The U.S. attorney said in this news conference that 2 of the 4 ringleaders of this massive human smuggling operation were arrested locally right here in Los Angeles, and that this smuggling operation spanned multiple countries, smuggled tens of thousands of people into the United States, and lasted for more than a decade. Now, let me play some of what the U.S. attorney had to say in this news conference. Take a listen.
The indictment alleges a transnational criminal organization smuggled approximately 20,000 illegal immigrants from Guatemala to the United States via Mexico, and then transported these aliens to cities throughout the United States. They held individuals smuggled hostage for months, threatened them and their family members with violence, and others, including children, were killed in a horrific car crash in Oklahoma in 2023.
Now, 2 of the ringleaders were arrested here in Los Angeles last Friday, but a third, this man, Helmer Obispo Hernandez, is still a fugitive. And the U.S. attorney says he actually called one of their agents while the ringleaders were being arrested and threatened to kill investigators by chopping off their hands. So needless to say, he's considered very violent and dangerous. Now, this is SkyCal video of Homeland Security investigators conducting an operation that appears to be related to this smuggling ring bust. This was in the Pico Union District last Friday. Here and at one other locations, they say that they took evidence into custody here, and 2 men were taken into custody accused of being ringleaders in this decade-long operation where the DOJ says the suspects would solicit people in Guatemala to come to the United States and charge them between $15,000 and $18,000 for the trip. The suspects would hold the immigrants hostage until they paid, and then they would ship them to various parts of the United States. Now, the U.S. attorney mentioned that in October of 2023, a 4th defendant allegedly caused the death of 7 migrants when he crashed a vehicle. Let me show you some pictures that they sent to us. This was the pictures of that crash in 2023. It was apparently during a smuggling operation happening in Oklahoma. 3 of the people killed in this crash included a 4-year-old. And this vehicle was being driven by one of these ringleaders, according to the Attorney General. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, all 3 ringleaders in custody are facing life in prison or the death penalty. The 2 arrested here in Los Angeles, though apparently they've already been arraigned, Leslie, and they've pleaded not guilty. That's it here from the desk. I'll send it back to you.
Mark, thank you so much for all those details.
You know, we used to say the Summer of Love was all about Woodstock and music and tuning in to, or what is it, tuning out, dropping in, whatever, that stuff. But, now when we use that phrase, we're talking about all the riots by the gangs that the Democrats pay to do bad stuff. And it just smells like they're getting a real jump on things. I mean, it's just March, guys. Chill. It's only been 6 weeks. Left-wing group behind the Red District Doge protests emails Democrat House members to tease upcoming demonstrations. Thank you in advance and for everything your boss is doing to leverage their power in this moment, writes Indivisible. And I guess this is what you do with a bunch of people who are now out of work because they didn't do anything for the federal government. And they also have some money that they need to pump into some of these Antifa types. This story is by Colin Anderson. Indivisible, the left-wing group behind the viral anti-Doge town hall protests in Republican deep red House districts, emailed Democratic congressional offices to inform them of similar protests the group plans to spearhead when Congress breaks for recess in roughly 2 weeks. The message takes credit for the viral February protests that drove headlines in the New York Times, Washington Post, and CBS News, all of which suggested that the demonstrations were proof of broad backlash over Elon Musk's efforts to slash government spending. The pieces did not mention that Indivisible and another left-wing group, Move On, led the demonstrations. Now, Indivisible is gearing up to generate similar scenes when both the House and Senate adjourn in mid-March, with the group teasing even bigger protests. During the February recess, Indivisible put Republicans on notice by organizing nearly 200 events across the country and directly challenging them for supporting unelected billionaires like Elon Musk over their own constituents. Indivisible's email states, for the March recess, we need to go even bigger to get the word out about Republicans moving full speed on the Trump tax scam. Or any member of Congress who declines to hold town hall meetings, Indivisible says it will encourage its members to organize an empty chair town hall, provide a forum for discussing the impact of Republicans' reckless agenda and how Democrats and everyday Americans must fight back. It asked congressional Democrats to reply with information regarding their own town halls to hopefully minimize the amount of calls and confusion over town hall scheduling. Thank you in advance and for everything your boss is doing to leverage their power in this moment, the email concludes. The message comes as House Republican leaders encourage their members to skip in-person town halls in favor of online events. Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, endorsed that approach on Tuesday, saying the party should not give a forum to professional protesters. It's unclear how aggressively Indivisible will target Democrat members. The group's updated Musk Us March Recess Toolkit urges activists to call out any missing in action Democrats who refuse to host a town hall. That language is more aggressive than the February version of the toolkit, which included a more general call to push wavering Democrats to hold the line. So far, though, Indivisible's work targeting congressional Democrats has largely come through phone banks rather than in-person demonstrations. During a February closed-door meeting for House Democrats, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, complained that both Indivisible and Move On had facilitated thousands of phone calls to Democrat offices. One senior member of the caucus told Axios that Jeffries was very frustrated with the groups. That could explain why Indivisible urged congressional Democrats to disclose their own town hall information in hopes of avoiding the amount of calls and confusion over town hall scheduling. Indivisible did not respond to a request for comment on how it intends to protest House and Senate Democrats who do not host town halls during the upcoming recess, which runs March 13th through 21st in the House and March 17th to 21st in the Senate. Indivisible has a long history of protesting Republican town halls when President Donald Trump is in office. It did so in 2017, prompting a similar call from GOP leaders to hold teletown halls instead of physical events. The Times referenced those protests in a Tuesday piece titled "Republican House Members Told to Stop Holding In-Person Town Halls," but again failed to mention Indivisible's role in organizing them. And you have to ask, where does the money come from? It's part of a machine designed to craft a message with actors to make people believe that there's more going on than there is. It's just so many. If you're looking for someone who has a remorse from voting for Trump, you really, really have a tough job. There is a lot of support for what Musk is doing with Doge. CNN's viewers know it. All the polls show it. So these propaganda rags that are trying to prop up this narrative are having a struggle convincing their regular constituent believers that what they're saying is true. And as we move forward into this strange new uncanny valley that we call current times, comes this story. Eerily realistic AI voice demo sparks amazement and discomfort online. This is over at arstechnica.com. Sesame's new AI voice model features uncanny imperfections, and it's willing to act like an angry boss. This is by Benj Edwards. In late 2013, the Spike Jonze film Her imagined a future where people would form emotional connections with AI voice assistants. Nearly 12 years later, that fictional premise has veered closer to reality with the release of a new conversational voice model from AI startup Sesame that has left many users both fascinated and unnerved. I tried the demo, and it was genuinely startling how human it felt, wrote one Hacker News user who tested the system. I'm almost a bit worried I will start feeling emotionally attached to a voice assistant with this level of human-like sound. In late February, Sesame released a demo for the company's new Conversational Speech Model, CSM, that appears to cross over what many consider the uncanny valley of AI-generated speech, with some testers reporting emotional connections to the male or female voice assistant, Miles and Maya. In our own evaluation, we spoke with the male voice for about 28 minutes, talking about life in general and how it decides what is right or wrong based on its training data. The synthesized voice was expressive and dynamic, imitating breath sounds, chuckles, interruptions, and even sometimes stumbling over words and correcting itself. These imperfections are intentional. At Sesame, our goal is to achieve voice presence, the magical quality that makes spoken interactions feel real, understood, and valued, writes the company in a blog post. We're creating conversational partners that do not just process requests, they engage in genuine dialogue that builds confidence and trust over time. In doing so, we hope to realize the untapped potential of voice as the ultimate interface for instruction and understanding. Sometimes the model tries too hard to sound like a real human. In one demo posted online by a Reddit user called Meta Knowing, the AI model talks about craving peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. Founded by Brendan Iribe, Ankit Kumar, and Ryan Brown, Sesame AI has attracted significant backing from prominent venture capital firms. The company has secured investments from Andreessen Horowitz, led by Anjani Midha and Mark Andreessen, along with Spark Capital, Matrix Partners, and various founders and individual investors. Browsing reactions to Sesame found online, we found many users expressing astonishment at its realism. I've been into AI since I was a child, but this is the first time I've experienced something that made me definitively feel like we had arrived, wrote one Reddit user. I'm sure it's not beating any benchmarks or meeting any common definition of AGI, but this is the first time I've had a real, genuine conversation with something I felt was real. Many other Reddit threads express similar feelings of surprise, with commenters saying it's jaw-dropping or mind-blowing. While that sounds like a bunch of hyperbole at first glance, not everyone finds the Sesame experience pleasant. Mark Hakeman, a senior editor at PC World, wrote about being deeply unsettled by his interaction with the Sesame voice AI. 15 minutes after hanging up with Sesame's new lifelike AI, and I'm still freaked out, Hackman reported. He described how the AI's voice and conversational style eerily resembled an old friend he had dated in high school. Others have compared Sesame's voice model to OpenAI's advanced voice mode for ChatGPT, saying that Sesame CSM features more realistic voices, and others are pleased that the model in the demo will role-play angry characters, which ChatGPT refuses to do. Gavin Purcell, co-host of the AI for Humans podcast, posted an example video on Reddit where the human pretends to be an embezzler and argues with a boss. It's so dynamic that it's difficult to tell who the human is and which one is the AI model. Judging by our own demo, it's entirely capable of what you see in that video. Under the hood, Sesame's CSM achieves its realism by using two AI models working together, a backbone and a decoder, based on Meta's Llama architecture that processes interleaved text and audio. Sesame trained 3 AI model sizes, with the largest using 8.3 billion parameters, an 8 billion backbone model plus a 300 million parameter decoder, on approximately 1 million hours of primarily English audio. Sesame's CSM doesn't follow the traditional two-stage approach used by many earlier text-to-speech systems. Instead of generating semantic tokens, high-level speech representations, and acoustic details, fine-grained audio features, in 2 separate stages, Sesame's CSM integrates into a single-stage, multimodal, transformer-based model, jointly processing interleaved text and audio tokens to produce speech. OpenAI's voice model uses a similar multimodal approach. In blind tests without conversational context, human evaluators showed no clear preference between CSM-generated speech and real human recordings, suggesting the model achieves near human quality for isolated speech samples. However, when provided with conversational context, evaluators still consistently preferred real human speech, indicating a gap remains in fully contextual speech generation. Sesame co-founder Brendan Iribe acknowledged current limitations in a comment on Hacker News, noting that the system is still too eager and often inappropriate in its tone, prosody, and pacing, and has issues with interruptions, timing, and conversation flow. Today, we're firmly in the valley, but we're optimistic we can climb out, he wrote. Despite CSM's technological impressiveness, advancements in conversational voice AI carry significant risks for deception and fraud. The ability to generate highly convincing human-like speech has already supercharged voice phishing scams, allowing criminals to impersonate family members, colleagues, or authority figures with unprecedented realism. But adding realistic interactivity to those scams may take them to another level of potency. Unlike current robocalls that often contain telltale signs of artificiality, next-generation voice AI could eliminate those flags entirely. As synthetic voices become increasingly indistinguishable from human speech, you may never know who you're talking to on the other end of the line. It's inspired some people to share a secret word or phrase with their family for identity verification. Although Sesame's demo does not clone a person's voice, future open source releases of similar technology could allow malicious actors to potentially adapt these tools for social engineering attacks. OpenAI itself held back its own voice technology from wider deployment over fears of misuse. Sesame sparked a lively discussion on Hacker News about its potential uses and dangers. Some users reported having extended conversations with the two demo voices, with conversations lasting up to the 30-minute limit. In one case, a parent recounted how their 4-year-old daughter developed an emotional connection with the AI model, crying after not being allowed to talk to it again. The company says it plans to open source key components of its research under the Apache 2.0 license, enabling other developers to build upon their work. Their roadmap includes scaling up model size, increasing dataset volume, expanding language support to over 20 languages, and developing fully duplex models that better handle the complex dynamics of real conversations. You can try the Sesame demo on the company's website, assuming that it isn't too overloaded with people who want to simulate a rousing argument. That is over at arstechnica.com. I encourage you to come check it out. There's lots of video here so you can see and hear this artificial intelligence voice for yourself. And before we leave Ars Technica, let's also have a look at this story. The modern era of low-flying satellites may begin this week. Flying closer to Earth delivers higher resolution imagery, but there's a catch. This is by Eric Berger. And what I thought was interesting about this is some of the stuff that's talked about here used to be highly classified information. I guess enough time has passed that it is no longer, but it does give us some insight into how things were and perhaps how things are and perhaps how things may be. The article reads, "The idea of flying satellites in very low Earth orbit is not new. Dating back to the dawn of the space age in the late 50s, the first U.S. spy satellites as part of the Corona program orbited the planet as low as 120 to 160 kilometers. That's 75 to 100 miles above the Earth. This low vantage point allowed the Kodak cameras on board the Corona satellites to capture the highest resolution images of Earth during the height of the Cold War. However, flying so close to the planet brought a number of challenges, most notably that of atmospheric drag. For much of the space age, therefore, satellites have flown much higher orbits. Most satellites today fly at an altitude of between 400 and 800 kilometers, or 250 and 500 miles, which is high enough to avoid the vast majority of atmospheric drag while still being close enough to offer good communications and a clear view of the planet. In recent years, a handful of new space companies have announced plans to develop small and medium-sized satellites designed to survive in very low Earth orbit, VLEO, and capable of taking advantage of the closer-in vantage point. First of these companies to actually reach the launch pad is a Denver-based startup named Albedo. Albedo was founded about 4 years ago by two engineers from Lockheed Martin, Topher Haddad and IJ Lassiter, and a software engineer from Facebook, Winston Tri. Since 2021, the trio has raised more than $100 million to develop satellites capable of delivering visual images with a resolution of 10 centimeters. The vision was to commercialize VLEO as a means to capture imagery at a resolution that today you can only get from planes or drones or commercially or from billion-dollar national systems on the national security side, Haddad said in an interview. This resolution is significantly higher than any currently available commercial satellite imagery and rivals the resolution of some of the best spy satellites currently operated by the U.S. and other large space powers. For high-resolution imagery today, Haddad said, sometimes the only real solution is helicopters or drones. That there are many locations on the planet that restrict flyovers, and the cost for regular overflights by aircraft adds up quickly. Albedo's first big test may come within the next week in the launch of the Transporter 13 mission on SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket. The company's first satellite, Clarity 1, is 530 kilogram, that's 1,170 pounds, and riding atop the stack of ride-sharing spacecraft. The mission could launch as soon as this coming weekend from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Clarity 1 satellite will be dropped off between 500 and 600 kilometers orbit and then attempt to lower itself to an operational orbit 274 kilometers, 170 miles, above the planet. This is a full-up version of Albedo's satellite design. The spacecraft is larger than a full-size refrigerator, similar to a phone booth, and is intended to operate for a lifetime of about 5 years, depending on the solar cycle. Clarity 1 is launching near the peak of the 11-year solar cycle, so this could reduce its active lifetime. Albedo recently won a contract from the United States Air Force Research Laboratory that is worth up to $12 million to share VLEO-specific on-orbit data and provide analysis to support the development of new missions and payloads beyond its own optical sensors. The advantages of such platforms include superior image quality, less congested orbits, and natural debris removal as inoperable satellites are pulled down into Earth's atmosphere and burnt up. But what about the drawbacks? In orbits closer to Earth, the primary issue is atomic oxygen, which is highly reactive and energetic. There are also plasma eddies and other phenomena that interfere with the operation of satellites and degrade their materials. This makes VLEO far more hazardous than higher altitudes. It's also more difficult to capture precise imagery. The hardest part is pointing and attitude control, Haddad said, because that's already hard in LEO. When you have a big telescope and you're trying to get a high resolution, then you put it in VLEO, where the Earth's rotation beneath is moving faster, and it just exacerbates the problem. In the next several years, Albedo is likely to reach a constellation size at about 24 satellites, but that number will depend on customer demand, Haddad said. Albedo has previously announced about half a dozen of its commercial customers who will task Clarity 1 for various purposes, such as power and pipeline monitoring or solar farm maintenance. But first, it has to demonstrate its technology. Again, that's over at arstechnica.com. In other news you might have missed this week, Maxine Waters tries to get into another federal building. It doesn't end well this time either. This is by Rusty Weiss over at redstate.com. Representative Maxine Waters, Mad Maxine, Democrat from California, is once again engaged in failing performance art, this time attempting to get into the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development headquarters. Waters, prior to a protest against slashing waste and fraud at HUD under the new administration, attempted to hand-deliver a letter to Secretary Scott Turner. And she was adamant about meeting Turner face-to-face, you guys. We came to deliver a letter to him, but they wouldn't let us do it, Waters claimed. We were stopped by someone who said he was a chief of staff and someone else who didn't identify himself, and they said he was too busy. I said, I'm prepared to stay here until hell freezes over, she added. Well, wouldn't you know it? Hell must have frozen over about 3 minutes later when she left. Everything about this is comedy gold, Jerry, from her committing to staying in perpetuity and then almost immediately leaving, to the very helpful HUD chief of staff offering for Maxine to watch a video of President Trump's accomplishments in the lobby while she waits. I mean, just a work of art. Well, here she is leaving, according to Breitbart News reporter Olivia Rondeau, within like 3 minutes since X posting with some video. We all know this was a political stunt on Waters' part, but in case it wasn't entirely spelled out in the clip, Turner's office issued a 5-step explainer on X. The message points out that despite the 86-year-old Congresswoman's claims, she was not denied entry and apparently took the staff up on their offer to watch the Trump video for at least a bit. Waters watched President Trump accomplishments video in lobby, the Post reads. They even suggest Maxine tried to goad them into saying she was being denied entry. You can clearly hear staff in the video explain to Ms. Waters that Turner was in a lengthy meeting and they'd helpfully deliver her letter, which I have to assume was written in crayon, to him. But they never said she's barred from the building. Now, if that wasn't enough entertainment, Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat from Michigan, tried to get in on the action, playing Barney Rubble to Maxine's Fred Flintstone. Tlaib's "look at me" ploy went about as well as you might imagine, with her screeching and launching profanities at the staff. When someone in the building, as Tlaib is tucking tail and retreating, points out he works for the American people, she becomes enraged. There's a profanity alert in that video. "No, you don't. No, you don't," she shouts, eventually adding, "You don't give a shit." I know. It's hard to believe that the impeach the MFer merch saleswoman couldn't hold it together. How pathetic does one have to be to play second fiddle to Maxine Waters? And is Waters the true leader of the Democrat Party at this point? She's definitely the leader of these protests. Anyway, this failed stunt comes on the heels of a similarly embarrassing incident in which Waters and several of her colleagues accosted and harassed a security guard at the education department. There's a video here about that as well. Waters belittles and mocks the security guard in that video. If only she had some sense of self-awareness that she's the one deserving of mockery. Better luck next time, Maxine. Don't ever change. Again, that's over at redstate.com. Now, to wrap things up this week, I had to circle back around to the first story that I covered because it's just juicy as it can be. Cory Booker admitted to orchestrating that Dem propaganda business, with you have like so many of them all repeating the same thing. And this is by Tyler Durden. On Tuesday, X user Western Lensman posted a video of 22 Democrat senators releasing identical propaganda videos in response to claims by President Trump, prompting conservatives to ask who was behind the AstroTurfed campaign. When people began asking questions, Elon Musk offered to buy a Cybertruck for anyone who can provide proof of who wrote this particular piece of propaganda, which X-user and deep dive researcher Code Monkey Z, here's a blast from the past, quickly uncovered as Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. Booker then fessed up, telling Musk to keep your truck. Clearly, you're triggered by the truth. A well-worn strategy, as we saw European leaders after Trump booting Zelensky from the White House last week. And remember, this is the same party that hired an ABC producer to literally produce the January 6th hearings in 2022. Is anything they do authentic? But you know it isn't. It's all a bunch of junk. Anyway, that last story is over at zerohedge.com. Well, I hope you guys have a great week. I want you to stay close to your families. I want you to stay close to your heart. Think about your health. The weather will be warming soon, and we'll be out and about and doing physical things. It's a new dawn, a new day. It's a time for us to celebrate new birth, and it's also a time for us to get active, to be energized, and to do good work. Remember, this stuff doesn't happen by accident, and we can't sit around on our laurels. We've got to be active in doing things that will keep this going. And remember, focus on yourself, your needs, your family's needs, your community's needs, and give away all that stuff that we don't have any control over, all that noisy propaganda that tries to influence us and degrade us, to make us feel like we need to just hide in our homes and quiver in fear. Forget that stuff. It's time for us to live. From the beautiful white sand beaches of the Emerald Coast on the Gulf of America, in the free state of Florida, this is BACFA. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for Atomic Biscuits. Tune in again next week for more news and music. Check out BACFA on Gab at BACFA, as well as Bitchute, Rumble, D-Live and Odysee. Check out LastScoutRadio.com for fun content. Listen to WBN 324 on radio stations around the world, on many streaming platforms, and World Broadcasting Network WBN 324.zil.